We are going to start with the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs. If you can please introduce yourself and your team, and then go through your slides. Appreciate it. So I'm sorry to make the mandatory announcement before hearings, but we have this new technology, and so on the right side of the two buttons, if you click that, it should also come up on, now it's on since it's red. So before you start speaking, if you can turn that on, and when you're done speaking and somebody else is speaking, to please turn it off. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you so much for having me. I'm Catalina Rodriguez Lima. I'm the Director of the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs, commonly known as MIMA, and I'm here with one of my staff.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Joyce Galabrin. I'm the new Language Access Project Manager with MIMA.
I'm sorry for that interruption. I'll make sure it doesn't happen again. You can proceed with your presentation.
Well, thank you again for your time this evening. And I do apologize if I'm a little off. We're coming back from our one-day conference where we had over 200 participants learning about immigrant integration, and it's great to be here with you all. So I'll just start with the mission of our office is to promote community well-being, economic development, and the integration of new Americans in Baltimore City. Some of the roles of MIMA are to advise the mayor, senior staff, agencies on matters related to foreign-born communities. We also provide technical assistance to city agencies, everything from policy, outreach strategies, messaging, resources, best practices, the what, the where, the who, and the how. We serve as a source of information for limited English proficient residents. Our folks are not watching WJC 13 or reading The Sun, so we work closely with ethnic media and making sure that they're informed of public services. We serve in this role for all of the agencies. So all of the information that's coming for the agencies is coming through our office to disseminate them to the various groups in various languages. We manage the city's language access program. We also do a lot of community engagement and outreach. As you know, the city of Baltimore is a city of neighborhoods. Our folks are not necessarily frequenting those platforms. And so because of that, we work closely with ethnic civic groups, nonprofit organizations, faith-based institutions, and ethnic media. And then finally, we respond to the needs of new Americans based on the changes at the federal level. Consistent with our mission, MIMA's initiatives are based on three areas: community well-being, economic growth, and immigrant integration, or as I like to call it, government accessibility. Today, I'll be sharing information on what MIMA has accomplished over the past year and what we're planning for fiscal year 24. The recommended budget includes MIMA's efforts to increase immigration legal services for new American families residing in our city. Over the last year, MIMA subcontracted with the CARE Coalition to provide deportation and removal defense to parents with children under the age of 18. Thanks to this program, 25 residents were able to access legal representation as they fought their cases in immigration court. 100% of these residents are breadwinners, and the time of residency of in our city is of 13 years. In addition, MIMA was successful at securing funds from the Open Society Foundation and grant makers concerned with immigrants to support Afghan evacuees and immigrant youth for 1 year. These funds were subcontracted to the International Rescue Committee, which was able to screen and connect 117 families from Afghanistan to provide attorneys for filing and representation on asylum applications. Furthermore, we supported Esperanza Center's community legal clinics at Benjamin Franklin for immigrant youth. Thanks to these funds, 47 youth were screened, of whom 29 were found to qualify for relief under the special juvenile visa, which is an immigration process available for certain undocumented youth who have been abused, neglected, or abandoned by one or both parents. Last year, MIMA was also awarded ARPA funds to establish the Baltimore New American Access Coalition, or BNAC. The program seeks to minimize the economic and social vulnerability of new American families by connecting them to health and human services with the help of a benefit navigator. BNAC partners with 4 nonprofit organizations to screen and intake eligible residents to the program. Through BNAC, our residents receive case management support for up to 6 months to access programs such as SNAP, WIC, SSI, TANF, Medicaid, childcare support, and food, energy, water, and internet assistance, to mention a few. Residents will also have access to a one-time financial assistance and to address any immediate needs. And finally, families will be able to access immigration consults to learn about their rights to services based on their immigration status. The program will be open until 2024, and our goal is to enroll 900 residents. To date, the program has enrolled approximately 170 applicants. As it pertains to our efforts around economic growth, MIMA continues to administer an employment and vocational training grant targeting refugees in Baltimore City. This grant is subawarded to the International Rescue Committee and is possible thanks to funding from the Maryland Office of Refugees and Asylees. Last year's award nearly doubled from previous years to help the increase of refugees arriving in Baltimore, in particular individuals from Afghanistan. The program requires the enrollment of 250 refugees, of whom 50% will have to be from Afghanistan. To date, the program has enrolled 114 people in need of employment services. Please note that almost half of MIMA's budget constitutes this grant. However, we subcontract approximately 95% of these funds to the International Rescue Committee. Finally, our budget supports a series of activities to increase accessibility and therefore promote, sorry, this is not the correct slide. Finally, our budget supports a series of activities to increase accessibility and therefore promote immigrant integration. Specifically, the recommended budget includes MIMA's Language Access Program, which provides language access resources, telephonic interpretation, translation resources, and technical assistance to city agencies to ensure compliance with federal mandates. During the last year, MIMA has worked with 12 agencies, trained 460 frontline employees, and translated 84 documents into 10 languages. In addition, a few months ago, we were able to hire a language access project manager to ensure programs created by ARPA funding are accessible in languages other than English. This position will be in place until October 2024 and is possible thanks to an ARPA grant. Also, our office has resumed in-person outreach and community engagement. During the last year, MIMA hosted its annual New American Leadership Institute, which is a 4-week training for immigrant leaders to learn about local government. In addition, today we hosted the 10th Baltimore Immigration Summit. After 3 years of COVID restrictions, the event is a one-day conference that brings together government, academia, practitioners, service providers, and advocates working with and for new Americans. This year's event had the largest number of participants since its establishment, with approximately 250 attendees. This past year, we've hosted 23 community stakeholder meetings, met in person with 25 partner organizations to reintroduce ourselves following COVID, and participated in 58 in-person outreach events. We also launched our first Asian American and Pacific Islander Advisory Committee, recruited for the Baltimore City Hispanic Commission, began convening our Community Advisory Board, and started our Language Access Oversight Committee. All of our committees meet on a bi-monthly basis to guide our work and, more importantly, to hold us accountable. We've increased our digital presence and have reached approximately 60,000 users via social media, and approximately 8,000 community members and organizations receive our monthly newsletter, which provides crucial information in 5 languages. We've also launched our first WhatsApp group to provide information to our providers and continue to explore new platforms to reach our communities. Lastly, during the last year, MIMA's 3 full-time and 1 contractual staff have provided technical assistance to 15 agencies on a range of topics impacting foreign-born residents, such as rental assistance, digital access, the city's website accessibility, the permits office, the city's solid waste management plan, public safety, the guaranteed income, to mention a few. In 2024, our office will focus on implementing projects funded by ARPA. Through BNAC, we plan to enroll 900 residents in need of assistance. And because we know how critical case management support is for immigrant households, we are also already looking and searching for funding opportunities to continue this program. Without it, it is nearly impossible for our families to navigate public benefit systems on their own, given the range of systematic barriers putting these programs out of their reach. We will also be focusing on increasing the city's language access capacity with the onboarding of 8 agencies and seek to translate a total of 400 vital documents. Finally, we will continue to assist city agencies to ensure services are inclusive of immigrant communities regardless of language, immigrant status, and the ability to access technology. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilman Burnett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director, for all you do. So you mentioned having 3 staff and 1 contractual permanent position. Can you expand on each of the positions with additional focus on the language access piece?
So there's the position of director, me setting the vision, being the face of the office, working with city agencies on really any topic, as I mentioned during my presentation. We also have a deputy director who is managing some of the day-to-day operations, paying the bills. She also manages our Immigration Summit, which happens today. She manages our New American Leadership Institute, which is the program that we host once a year. We have our program outreach coordinator, and she's responsible for doing outreach citywide with the various community groups. So she works closely with ethnic media, churches, nonprofits. And then finally, our language access coordinator contractual position, which is not a full-time position with benefits. That position is responsible for working with city agencies to ensure compliance. And so compliance for us means that our language access coordinator works with a cohort of agencies to do a couple things. One, do a 4-factor analysis, which is a baseline of where the agency finds itself as it relates to language access. Then the agency is placed on a plan to develop a language access plan. Ideally, agencies have their own plans on planning for language access. So that period takes about 6 months. In addition, we started the process of identifying vital documents for that particular agency. So that process can take a couple of months, and determining which documents from the agency are deemed vital. We also create access to language access resources, meaning we provide telephonic interpretation to the agency, but we also, as I mentioned earlier, determine which documents are considered vital for translation. And along with that, we provide training on how to use these services, and in particular, telephonic interpretation. We also try to identify places where people are likely to encounter the agency to make sure that we have signage letting people know that we have language access resources. And finally, we also have a monitoring process where agencies are supposed to update that language access guidance plan, but also report to us how the process of language access is going. So as you can hear, this process is very elaborate, and that has to happen across 20 agencies. So the way we've been doing it with this contractual position is we've been doing it in phases. So we've had 2 phases of agencies. We have a total of 12 agencies that have gone through that process. And we take about 6 to 9 months to get them to this place of compliance, the initial part of it. But starting next year, and now with Joy on board, we're going to be onboarding the 3rd cohort of agencies, which will be 8 agencies. We are currently without a language access coordinator. That contractual position has been vacant since January. That position, unfortunately, that language access coordinator was recruited by Montgomery County to be their language access coordinator. So we have been hiring. It is really challenging to hire because that contractual position is only $55,000. So attracting talent for that amount of money has been challenging. However, with Joy on board, thanks to ARPA funding, we hope to expedite some of those processes.
Mr. Chair, how you want to do? I have 3 questions, and there's 2 of us. Can we just keep going, or?
We're going to go back and forth.
Okay.
So,
right. Thank you.
Councilwoman Ramos?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm so glad you have an language access coordinator. In the process that you mentioned, that you just outlined, One of the things that I hope is also in there is about language access in public meetings. I had noticed that DOT, and I didn't mention to them because that was just a lot of going on in that hearing, but they do a survey at the beginning of every public meeting, and it's in English, and then it asks you to change, what language are you actually communicating with, and what are you supposed to do, right? So, so hopefully they are also looking at not just access in terms of customer service, but also the public meetings as well.
Yes, Councilwoman. So the services that MIMA offers today are translation of documents and telephonic interpretation. And we've been able to centralize those costs so that agencies can access those services through our office. It's also a good way for us to monitor and determine who's using them. And to encourage the use as we are trying to tackle this adaptive challenge, right? On-site interpretation is something that we haven't delved into, mainly because of limited capacity, but also because we really want to be fiscally responsible around how we create a system where we can provide interpreters that are very expensive to agencies, and what situations should require an interpreter. And to be honest with you, we've been trying to take care of the initial lift of compliance. Not to say that we would not do on-site interpretation in the future. We're trying to figure out what is the best way to do it in a way where it's cost-effective, but also that agencies know that it's not a resource that can be easily accessed because of its cost, and so that they don't come to us asking for it every single time for any event. I am, though, very, very encouraged with having Joy and additional steps for us to have the space to even think about what are some best practices around the country that we could think about implementing here in Baltimore.
So it sounds like you're thinking about it.
Yes, we are thinking about it.
We do want to, I would say that I hope to see a budget allocation in the 25 budget to help with that, because I think we are getting, way more people interested in participating in government, which is good. And want to be able to provide that.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. There are certain circumstances where we have to have language access from the perspective of an interpreter to make sure that we're, one, complying with the law, right, and making sure that we're taking meaningful steps to provide access.
Well, and the interpretation is a little complicated because some of the work that we're doing is technical, and then the translation of a technical. That's what we found when we did our language access hearing here, was that some of the language didn't, so I understand the challenge.
Yeah, a lot of it is also customized.
Yeah.
Every agency, so we've created these frameworks to capture as many agencies, but a lot of the work that we do is how do we find a solution that is specific to that particular agency, that particular program or initiative, and that takes a lot of time from our office in trying to understand what is the message that the agency is trying to communicate? What is the service? What can we bring to the table in terms of language access?
Mm-hmm. And then when is the city council getting?
City council is a part of the next onboarding of agencies, so we will be in touch in the next few weeks. Yep.
Great, that's good news. So it'll be then it's one of the 8, basically, that you've got.
Yes.
Okay, great, awesome. Okay.
Yes, and a lot of the delays have happened because of COVID, and obviously because of the position being vacant. Our prior language access coordinator let me know that he was going to be taking another position prior to me going on maternity leave, so that was another reason why we paused our activities as well.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Burnett?
Thank you. So, Director, one of the concerns that I've been bringing up to each of the agencies, particularly the larger ones, is around vacancies and recruitment. I feel strongly that a lot of our agencies are spending more in contractors than actual employees because they aren't hiring effectively. New Americans are being largely ignored when it comes to recruitment, and could absolutely fill vacancies across a number of professions and employment levels. I think the state has done a pretty good job to some degree with this and recruiting, a diverse set of workforce, but not so much in the city. Can you, one of the things I've been pressing them on is agencies are not doing a good job at pushing job notices, recruitment flyers, et cetera, in a multitude of languages. We're staffing their hiring events with folks who speak multiple languages that reflect the makeup of our communities. Can you talk about the number of requests your office receives for services by our agencies? And if you don't have that information, can we make this a committee request? We can go to the next question if not.
I don't have a specific number for you, but what I will say is that it is a challenge, not just in local government, especially when we talk about bilingual human capital. A lot of our nonprofits serving immigrants are also struggling to identify bilingual candidates. To the point where we've actually served as a source of information for those employment opportunities being made available. So on our newsletter, monthly newsletter, we share all of the employment opportunities that target bilingual candidates from government, from nonprofit organizations, because many of these agencies actually come to us to help recruit. So we put it out into our network, but we are competing with other jurisdictions that offer higher pay for people who are bilingual. So I think that's one of the challenges. One of the things that we do want to explore now that we have additional capacity is bilingual staff from the perspective of language access. And again, given the limited resources that we have and that we're a very small team, it's been really challenging to even think about HR, which is a completely separate topic from what we do. We're not necessarily HR experts, but we can help identify best practices. Actually, not far from here, Montgomery County has a program which has a differential pay for people who are bilingual, so that we can start learning about what are some best practices happening in our state that we can replicate here in the city for the purposes of language access, but also to make sure that our government looks like our constituents, right? But what I will say is that we do compete with multiple jurisdictions, in particular Prince George's County and Montgomery County, and some of those counties actually paying people who are bilingual additional money for that skill.
And just really quick follow-up, how can we do, I mean, you hit on some of the competition. How many positions do you have dedicated to outreach? Just a quick follow-up. If you don't have it on hand, just it could be a committee request for time.
So
how many do you have for outreach?
So we have one person for outreach.
Okay.
We currently have additional outreach positions thanks to ARPA funding. The case management program that I mentioned has a dedicated outreach person until 2024. We also have a CDC grant that's dedicated toward outreaching in AAPI communities. One of the things that I've been really intentional over the last few years is repairing some of the relationships with our Asian American and Pacific Islander communities. So we do have a person who is working part-time to build relationships with Asian American and Pacific Islander communities and start learning about what are some of the needs that these constituencies have that we in local government can address.
Thank you.
Thank you. How much money did you guys request in ARPA dollars?
We requested close to $4 million. About 3.2 is going towards this case management program that I mentioned called BNAC, which provides case management support, financial assistance, and immigration legal services, where we seek to serve approximately 900 residents. And the remainder is towards the hiring of CHOI, but also creating additional translation resources for any agency program created by ARPA funding. The idea is that any program created by ARPA should be translated and should be accessible in other languages.
So you asked for $4 million and you got $4 million.
I think I asked for 7.
Okay. Sounds good. And what are you going to do when the money runs out?
It's an excellent question. So we're already looking for funding opportunities for the case management program in particular. because our folks are really struggling. The recovery is uneven. Our immigrant communities are facing eviction. They are impacted. As I said, the recovery is uneven, and having access to case management has been really helpful for them to access basic things like food, Medicaid. We are already looking for funding opportunities. Last year we launched the Baltimore Immigrant Community Fund, which is trying to create a funding collaborative to raise money for nonprofit organizations. And we're currently working on the framework of that collaborative. Just last week, I was made aware that we were awarded $300,000 from OSI, but our goal is to continue to raise money to fund some of these programs.
That's good. We have to wrap up in a minute, so I just want to give Councilwoman Ramos the opportunity to ask a question quicker than she's ever asked a question, and if you could respond even quicker than that. Thank you.
Just to follow up on my last piece about the report, you're doing the compliance. Do you have reports that you can share with us about which agencies are complying, what kinds of, how are they accessing language line, how many people are using it, all of that? I would imagine since you're doing compliance, you have that, and I'd love to see that.
Yes, we do get reports on the usage of language access resources, and we do have the language access plans that agencies have created.
If I can get that, that would be
Yep.
great.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for that request. We'll write it down somewhere. We are now adjourned.
Mr. Chair, sorry, can I just do a request, not a question?
Very quickly.
Okay. So during one of our meetings, the Human Trafficking Collaborative, many mentioned the need to have a language access resource for nonprofits serving immigrants. And this is the request, so you don't have to respond here. Are language access resources limited to city agencies? And if so, what would it take to expand these services to external organizations? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, that's written down. Thank you very much. Thank you for your work, and we are adjourned.
Thank you.